Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our show, and today our guest, Peter Sisson. Really successful person. He have four, at least I know, four exits. Maybe there is more. And today we want to chat about how to build a business, how to build the right mindset that will help you to build a business, what marketing role in all of these things, and many other things, and especially how to not to get deadly cold and frozen in California. And it was really cold. How are you doing, Peter?
Good, Chris. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I'm excited to be here.
Me too. It was a cold night. You and I living in the same city, we make through it, which is good. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey as an entrepreneur?
Sure. I'm a techie, product-oriented guy by background. I have a master's in computer science, AI from Stanford way back when it was before neural networks and before machine learning had blossomed like it has today. And then I have an MBA from Tuck, which is Dartmouth Business School. And my undergraduate was math and computer science. So I'm pretty geeky. And after business school and doing some work for consulting and banking, I then started my first company, which is called wineshopper.com. And we can talk about each, but I'll just highlight them now. That one was sort of my big top line VC. We raised $46 million. Jeff Bezos was an investor. Their plan was to make us a tab on the Amazon website for selling wine. We had all these regulatory issues sorted out to ship the wine, blah, blah, blah. So that company got acquired by wine.com after the bubble burst in 2000. And then I went on to create a company called Mixonic, which still exists today. Now it just prints custom merch like mugs and sweatshirts and hoodies. It used to do. We built the business on custom CDs. Your audience probably doesn't even remember those days, but we used to have to burn CDs. That's how we would store music. And for a musician to get a high quality CD that looked like a professional printed one, you had to get at least 1,000. We did short run, and that was successful. And then we added other merch as people.
How many CDs you burned per day?
That's a great question. Let's see, at a 7 million run rate, which is what the company was before we were acquired, divide that by 12, let's say by 10 would be 700,000 a month. So let's say it's 600,000 a month, and then divide that by $1 a CD. So probably 600,000 CDs a month.
Probably like
we were shipping
20,000 CD per day, pretty much.
It sounds right. Yeah, it actually.
That was fun back then.
Yeah, no, we were a little factory. We were a factory. We had all these machines spinning up CDs and a bunch of guys back there just tending to them. And it was fun. We're shipping a real product. It was all web-based, but in the end, UPS came at the end of every day and picked up all these packages that went all around the US and even to foreign countries. And then that, I really focused more on the building phase. So I then put in a friend from business school as CEO of that company and moved on to start what was probably my greatest success, which was called Telio, which was, we raised $2 million, and within a year, Microsoft bought it for $23 million. So that was a really happy.
And that was really real quick, right? So you basically just skyrocket in 2 years.
Absolutely. It was about timing, and I'll talk more about that as we get into questions and stuff. But Skype had just come out. This is the mid 2000s. Skype had just come out. Microsoft AOL, which was relevant at the time, Yahoo, which was relevant at the time, and Google. So four companies, AOL, Microsoft, Google, and Yahoo, were looking at us as a quick way to answer the competitive threat of Skype, because we were basically a white label version of Skype that integrated before Skype did into browsers and email with click to call. We kind of did the first click to call stuff. And there's a whole dance that you do, but long story short, we got Yahoo and Microsoft both interested, which is the dream scenario, because then you play them off each other, and that's how the number got up to 23 million. And then I signed a non-compete rather than go work for Microsoft. And so I had 1 year what I was not allowed to work in the tech industry. And then
Which is you probably spent somewhere in a warm place.
I was all over the world. I'm an adventure kind of traveler. So I was in places like Bhutan and Nepal. And,
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, really, really fun stuff, just seeing parts of the world that I hadn't been able to see. And then the day after my non-compete ended, I incorporated line 2, which is funny because I was like, okay, that worked pretty well, VoIP, voice over IP. So I'm going to do another one as smartphone, because we were pre-smartphone with that first company. So with Telio, so we're like, oh, smartphones are coming. Let's build an app that adds a second line to a smartphone. And that was line 2. So it was like you can do it today now with dual SIMs and with other apps, but we were actually the first approved by Apple, which was a whole nightmare in and of itself, to provide a second fully functional line with texting and auto attendant, so that, press 1 for sales, press 2 for service, so that you could run an entire business on your smartphones and still have it act like a PBX.
That was business number 3, right?
That was 3. And that was where there was all sorts of drama and lessons learned talking about choosing investors carefully. But long story short, we grew it to 7 million in 18 months. And then Apple changed the rules about free trials. We had to try and come up with a new way to maintain our growth. And the board said, nah, let's just try and sell the company. And I was like, guys, we're just getting started. So that led to a fight. And ultimately, the two investors who never saw eye to eye suddenly did, to gang up and basically force me out. I even brought them a buyout investor who would have offered them an 8% return on their money just to give me my company back. And by then it had gotten to the point where they were just, So they took the company and they held it, and they had it for 5 years. And 5 years later, the revenue, they hadn't grown it a bit. It was still 7 million. And meanwhile, our competitors had become billion-dollar market cap companies. So that was a pretty frustrating experience. And there's all sorts of lessons about choosing investors there. But it did get acquired in 2018 for $12 million, which is exactly the amount of money they needed to sell it for. So the investors made twice their money, and there was nothing left for the founders and employees.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's how people who don't have heart and soul in the business can run the business under the ground.
Absolutely.
That's interesting. So, and your current business right now, it's called Certified.
That's correct.
This should be the next big win, I guess, before you jump onto the metaverse.
Yes, there's two really interesting things coming. I think obviously AI, generative AI, I think that's going to create a whole new wave of companies and ideas and problem solved. And then the other thing is, I think genetics are getting so advanced that we're going to find really crazy stuff going on with genetics and preventing disease and treating illness and even, I think, sculpting how people turn out,
Yeah,
designer babies or something.
that's really
Um,
nice.
yeah, but what Certified does is it's like it's the problem it's trying to solve is fake news, fake videos, fake reviews, fake products. It's getting easier and easier to defraud people online. Something like I've seen stats that say like 4/5 of reviews on some websites. I heard this mentioned for TripAdvisor, but I can't confirm it. Are fake, done by review farms. People offshore reviews their bots. Competitors come in and say horrible things. There's all sorts of problems with reviews, and I all that Certify it does is proves that and it basically allows you to record a short video and forces you to post it at your exact location, and it moves the video immediately from your phone into our server where we stream it, which means the video can't be tampered with. You can't even access your own video. But by doing that, we protect it from being altered. And with deepfakes and all the editing tools, in 5 years, it's not going to be possible to tell the difference between what's real and what's not.
Yeah.
And so Certify It is a tool to just, you can use it all sorts of ways, but basically it just records a video that you share with a link that proves something happened somewhere, or you were there, or what a place looks like, or that you have the product in stock, or that you went to the restaurant before you reviewed it, all of those things.
Interesting. So basically, it can use either the front and back camera and also screen recording.
Not screen recording. It's very controlled. So you're using our camera, and we've developed, using the APIs, restrictions on what you can do with the camera, and a couple other tricks, so that, like, for example, you can't post without identifying your location, and you can only slide the map within 200 meters of where you are. We allow that because of GPS distortion, but more or less, you can't. All you have to literally, like, here's an example. Let's say you're trying to line up a date on Tinder, and the person on the other end seems a little bit dodgy and you're not really sure. You just say, hey, could you send me a certified video just to prove you are who you are? And that's also going to show me where you are, so I know you're not trying to.
So I don't have to walk by you and pretend that I don't
Exactly.
when we're going to meet.
All of those other tricks, you don't even have to bother, because you can see, you'll get a video of them talking to you that they had just recorded, and that's exactly what they look like right now. You might have heard of Be Real, which came out well after us, but Be Real, which just at a random time every day, it asks its members to record a short video. No matter what they're doing or where they are. So it catches them with their pants down, so to speak, and it's much more authentic. And that's kind of the flavor of these videos, because you can't go in and Photoshop them, can't make them pretty. They are just, you can trim the edges, but other than that, you can't do anything. And so they're it feels like live video.
Speaking about the pants down situation here, like, what if the user don't want to record the video like that particular moment or that specific moment, or maybe person just like simply sick and don't feel well, and is that video like face recognition, or it could be just environmental and the geolocation attached to the video immediately? Like, what's the use cases? Can you give a couple of like examples as well?
Yeah, sure. So let's talk about fake reviews, for example. So we're reaching out to the various travel and restaurant booking sites and saying, hey, you've got a fake review problem. And if you've been on VRBO or booking.com, you'll see the problem. A lot of these are bot reviews. And so you're seeing star ratings and rankings for properties that don't reflect their actual quality. And so the pitch to those guys is if you have a level of review, a certified review, where the person first has to prove that they're there by recording a short certified video and submitting it to the website, then they're free to get sort of like a Twitter blue badge, type of thing. But it'd be a new level of review where the person was actually there,
Mhm.
and it would completely stop the power of these review farms, offshore review farms that people buy reviews from. It would totally invalidate them because now okay, I'm just going to focus on the reviews of people who are actually there, proved it. So that's one example.
Mhm.
Um, the other one, you're buying a product from someone online. It could be Etsy, it could be an Amazon store, it could be eBay, and there's lots and lots of product fraud online. So you could just say to the seller, hey, just want to make sure what you got works, that you have it in stock, that it looks, that it's the product you say you're selling me. So can you send me like it's a little Roomba or something? Can you just turn it on and show me that it works? And then that video is also going to reveal their location. So if they're trying to scam you, they're not going to send you that video.
Mm.
Um, and so you can find it's a way to create a barrier that only honest people would be willing to cross, and the
Yeah.
dishonest people will be blocked because they don't want to reveal anything more about themselves. So those are some examples of the sort of use cases. It could be you have remote contractors working on your house and you're at the office all day. For those who still work in offices, and you want them to, or it's a remote, maybe a vacation home, you want them to provide an update on progress, but they can just send you any picture. You don't really know what's real, what's live, and so, managing people remotely, you could easily use it for that. People doing contract work or renovations, check in at the end of every day with a progress report. Anytime where you're just dealing with people where you maybe don't know them that well and you want to make sure that they're not trying to
Sounds
screw
like
with you.
building ultimate trust with the people without asking them or without telling them, hey, I don't really trust you, but I want to make sure that everything work just.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. It's about
Interesting.
transparency, and the thing
Mhm.
transparent. It's the opposite. So it's a really interesting line we have to walk because we're the company is a public benefit corp, meaning we're mission driven, and we're committed to protecting privacy and promoting accurate information on the internet. So that's what our mission is, to try to fight fake news and all these other forms of fraud.
Mhm.
Um, the the but at the same time, we also want to. So we want to force transparency, but also protect privacy, which sounds like competing terms. But it's an interesting product and a difficult product to bring to market because you don't necessarily use it yourself. The thing is, you have to ask someone else to use it.
Mhm.
So and that transparency is imposed upon the other person, and transparency leads to better behavior. It's
And as
just
a
like
business model is just beautiful because you don't have to promote it. People will promote it themselves because that's how thing will spread. And
that's the idea.
this
That's
is
the
really
idea.
smart.
But it's hard to, I think the way we're going to go to market is through partnerships. So let's say we get someone like TripAdvisor
Mhm.
to have this level of reviews. If we start, because people right now, they don't know about it. And most people don't like to go first. They don't
Mhm.
like to try things.
First adapters.
So if they go to the app store and they download Certify It, um, there are people that maybe go that far, but then they're afraid to use it until they're sure that other people are using it. There's kind of that,
Yeah,
how things grow. It's like,
yeah. It's
I,
kind of like the first wave of adapters or first adapters wave, and then there is majority of the users, and there's people who never do it. People
yep.
who still have like I don't know button phone, uh, smartphone,
Right.
you know, and playing with yo-yo versus like I don't know the any smart devices or VR glasses. Okay, cool. What should people know or think, or how they should shape their mind to be as entrepreneurial as you are, or what will be helpful for people who start their businesses or running their businesses to know? um,
I've got a lot of ideas I can tell you. So I think I know where you're headed. So I'll talk a little bit about some of the characteristics.
yeah,
And then if we have time, I can talk a little bit more about how investors kind of look at companies and the sort of boxes you need to check off. So in terms of the characteristics that I believe lead to the most successful entrepreneurs, one is you're a curious person by nature. So that means that, you get frustrated if you have a frustrating experience, you just don't say like, "Ah, that sucks." You're like, I wonder if there's a better way." So you're already that kind of person. Um, there's an expression, necessity is the mother of invention. I would say curiosity is the mother of invention in a way. Um, Curiosity kind of drives everything. So I think, you know, successful founders are always asking why. I think that why is it why are things this way? You're not satisfied with the status quo. The second and the biggest by far is the tolerance for failure. You have to be willing to fail to take the risks that are bold enough to make money. If you don't take a big enough risk, then you're probably not talking about an opportunity that's big enough for investors, right?
yeah,
And
fail fast and fail small.
yes, and so you just got, iteration is nothing more than failing fast, right? So you put something out, users say no, you iterate, they say a little better, you iterate again. So you failed those first two times, right? And so, failure is essential to all innovation. And if you look at the history of many great companies came from failed, like Twitter came from a failed podcasting company called Odeo.
Mhm.
Um, Slack came from a failed gaming company called Tiny Speck. They had a game called Glitch, and the game failed, but they had developed this internal tool called Slack, and that's ended up what ended up being their product. Um, and then look, Google's failed massively with Google Glass, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Facebook,
It was one of the most famous failure in the world.
yeah,
They
you
spent so
might
much money.
so much money, and then you've got like I don't know if people remember Facebook actually tried to put out a phone hardware at one point. That was a fail. That was about a decade ago.
Do you think
Um,
metaverse will be a fail, or Meta? I mean, I call Facebook Meta.
yeah,
Fail, or they will go somewhere.
I think that the metaverse will be very fun for gaming, for entertainment, for certain types of training, immersive training, like teaching how to repair a jet engine where you're physically doing things. Augmented reality could help there as well. But I think Zuckerberg's vision, I personally think it's off. I don't think that we want to socialize and work with heavy VR headsets on our heads. They make a third of people motion sick.
What if
And
it will be not a heavy VR, but just like glasses like I have?
well, that's coming. So AR, I'm a big believer in AR. So I think that AR will have glasses or even contact lenses
Yeah.
or someday implants that have much of the phone's functionality.
Yeah.
We may still have a little phone so that you can type in stuff, but the inputs and the outputs will probably come through glasses of some sort.
Mhm.
So that I agree with, but Meta's going hard on VR, not AR. That's
Like,
so that's you're bumping into furniture. I mean, there's like in 19. I mean, you can look at sitcoms from the 90s where they're making fun of the fact that you put on VR headsets and you're walking around blind and you break furniture and knock over Christmas trees and Lord knows what. And so I just don't see us locking ourselves into these dark worlds with and ending every day with a imprint on our face of the outline of a VR headset. because we've been in there all day. I think, you know, he's had a very unusual life. He's not done, he got thrust into his world when he was 20 years old. I don't think he's had a normal childhood. I don't think he quite understands the human connection part that we all need as part of how we work and socialize together. And I think that his vision of us living in VR as avatars, the top half of ourselves currently, um, I think that's wrong. I think that I think the metaverse strategy of Meta is going to be a huge failure. Check back in a year. Let's see if I was right. But I think he's got it wrong. I think it's training, education, and entertainment.
Okay, so what's the following? Because I interrupt you. What's the following bullet points that will
Yeah. So,
build the right character of successful entrepreneur or mindset of successful entrepreneur?
right. So first we said
Curiosity,
curiosity and failure.
failure.
And then I think, you know, you need to be a trustworthy person. So that's all just the normal characteristics that you would want anyone to have in business that you're dealing with, you know, honest, authentic, high integrity, transparency. I think, you know, that there's people who push limits with business. I think we've seen a lot of that in the crypto space.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, Chris, you have some knowledge of this space from prior work. So it's I think ultimately those core human values are really important, and that's kind of has to do with picking right everything. Kind of trust is important, I guess. The other way I you can think about it is it's not the same, but empathy is really important as well, because you need to be able to put yourself into the mind of customers and stuff like that. So, but the single biggest reason why startups succeed, actually, I'll save that for my punchline. The last big one is persistence, right? So, not giving up, it is really important. You know, it's not hard, it's not easy. And when it gets hard and you're getting negative feedback from customers and potential partners and investors, that's not when you throw up your hands, that's when you double down. And so often, you know, the tiny speck people could, with the game Glitch, could have given up and glitched, but instead they stuck with it. And now we have Slack, and now they've done all very well.
Yes.
So that's persistence. And then the last thing is I'll tell kind of through a story of there was a VC who was bigger probably in a couple decades ago, Bill Gross, but he's Idea Lab he was one of the first incubators. This is back in the first wave before YC and all of that. So around the turn of the century. It sounds old that way.
Yeah.
But he studied 200 startups, and he looked at a correlation with success between 5 different factors. One was the idea itself, quality of idea, how innovative it was, blah, blah. The team, you know, how experienced, how proven, how, you know, powerful, high power, sort of on paper, at least the team looked, you know, how strong, clever the business model was, you know, how sustainable profits were, the amount of funding they raised, and the amount and the timing, like when, in terms of the sort of the product and market life cycle development, demand development, timing. And they looked at all those factors, and the amount of funding raised correlated the least with success. So it doesn't, just raising a ton of money doesn't correlate with a lot of success, as we've seen. And the one that correlated the most, you know, 3 times as much as the amount of funding raised, for example, is timing. And that's what I've seen over and over again in my own career and in those of others. There are some people that are just a little too early. There's some people that time it just right, and there's some people a little too late. And the example in my career of the timing was that exit to Microsoft for $23 million.
Mm-hmm.
Skype was brand new and these huge companies were panicking about it. So they're like, there's, they've got, this ex, ex, exclamation marks above their head saying, WTF, what are we going to do with the Skype thing? And, and we just happened to have what they needed at the exact time they needed it, and had 6 months later,
Mm-hmm.
6 months literally later, Skype came out with their Skype in, where you could use real phone numbers, because that was our first differentiator, is use real phone numbers. And then they came out with click to call integrations. And so, what was unique about us, and sort of a realization that it was easier to build than they thought, lasted for about 6 months. And then by then, nobody would have bought us, and they would have built it themselves.
It's
Or
exactly the same thing with YouTube. 'Cause
yeah,
YouTube is not the inventor itself. There was companies before YouTube, but they
yep.
was right there in the right time, in the right space, in the right spot.
And so many things lined up, right? It has to
Yep.
be the amount of people with computers, how fast the internet is, the interest in video, all of these things. And like your business is, I'm sure, the demand has to just be increasing, because everything's moving to video more and more.
Everyone needs video. That's crazy. Like what I'm seeing, like right now, companies start to competing with each other because for people's attention, because there's
Yes.
so much noise out there, and nobody read articles anymore. People get spoiled.
Yeah.
And it's really
So
interesting.
true.
So, speaking about that kind of like topic, can you give me a little bit of perspective? What do you think successful companies need in terms of promoting themselves, being out there to catch this right timing, to catch people's attention, because attention is the currency, right?
Yes.
And how to get there, and what kind of tools the most effective part for it?
I think you've got to be everywhere. You've got to be in every channel, and you've got to have as much video or visual imagery as possible. You know what? Think of a LinkedIn post that doesn't have any attached video or photo. You don't even notice it at this point. Our feeds, if there's nothing visual in any of our feeds, other than maybe Twitter, um, it doesn't register, because these feeds are so full that you've got to have something that captures people's attention, and visual content does that. And the trick is to be everywhere that you can be. And of course, the best situation of all is if it's your own customers and evangelists who are spreading the word. So if you can give them videos like you guys make, or our own examples of the videos of use cases, things like that. It's the problem, I think, is having enough content to keep the channels full, because
Mhm.
otherwise it's like a sponge. If you don't keep pressing on it, it's going to pop back to where it was before, meaning you didn't make an impression. And so,
And you roll back and nobody will notice you because
absolutely,
there's so much noise.
there's so much noise,
Yeah,
and you need tons of content.
constant.
Dude,
Yeah,
constant content.
yeah.
And I think that's the biggest challenge, and that's why companies like yours exist, is because of who has the bandwidth and the talent to create all of this video, to create all of this, because you just have to be posting everything
You know what
every
I truly
day.
believe? I believe that at some point right now there is like promotion companies, explainer companies, production companies, and they doing different kind of videos. And companies uh, right now, enterprise or other companies, they buying whether it's going to be promotion or explainer or testimonial. I think the future of video production itself, they will become content creation companies when they create content on daily basis. For example, content like what you and I have, when they have a person who run podcasts and basically they trim podcasts in a short pieces. Then they create a promotional video when they have like builds up a couple of testimonials, and then they record testimonials, because everything is such an intertwining right now, and market asking for different types of content, because
Mm-hmm.
like 10 years ago, or maybe even 5 years ago, if you put one promotional video, that will be enough for you to put your message out there, and people will go like, oh, this company ABC, they're doing XYZ. Right now it's not enough, and
Now,
I believe that it will change the way these companies like mine exist, and they all become educational content creation.
yeah, because that's the problem. We have these channels to fill, and you know, it's just in order to break through, you've just got to be constantly present in all these channels. So you just
Yeah,
have an absolute need for as much content as you can possibly generate. And that's why, it's going to get interesting when these generative AI things like using Dolly 2 or GPT-3 to write marketing copy and Dolly 2 to create uh, visuals by just describing them.
hmm
This is going to help with the content creation, but it's also going to probably annoy people that, wait a minute, humans aren't even writing this, and I already have enough to look through. And now if AI can generate it,
yeah,
there's going to be an explosion of content, and it's really going to be tricky to break through. And I think, you know, catchy, it's going to be creativity and like the videos you guys produce, creative hooks and really coming up with stuff that startles people into noticing is going to be more and more important potentially.
mhm,
Content that grabs attention.
yeah.
Um,
For the noise,
you guys, yeah, you guys have all sorts of different types of videos that I was looking at your site, which I think is important because
yeah,
um, if everything starts looking the same with AI,
yeah. That
nothing's going
makes
to
sense.
stand out.
Okay, cool. Because I don't want this podcast turn into the our proportional conversations, like, hey, go on.
And you didn't ask me. I just want to be clear to the listeners. You did not ask me to say any of that. I
No,
truly believe it.
I appreciate it, because I truly believe in this too, and that was the reason why we run this company. And it's I think it's obvious, and it's earlier or later become more and more obvious for other people's. And I even hearing from other influencers and not decision makers, but people who like run masses, educate masses. They go that most of the businesses, especially technology businesses, they must become educational businesses. They must teach
Interesting.
people. Yeah, if you're not, if you run business and it's not tech business, it's dead business. If you run tech business and it's not educational, it probably will be that business at some point too.
Well, that's interesting because, yeah, in a sense, the pipes through which this content goes are commoditizing. I mean, yes and no. Yeah. I mean, but, you Facebook is a certain type of content, Insta has a certain type, Twitter has a certain type, LinkedIn has a certain type. So they all, I think we've all noticed that they're all starting to look pretty similar.
Exactly.
It's really the tone and the type of content that goes on each channel.
Yeah.
And that also creates demand for yet more content because you've got to customize it for what works with each of those channels. But, that said, the channels themselves, I don't, you know, well, I'm not going to say there won't be new ones emerging because that's guaranteed there will be. I mean, there will be somebody that comes and kicks TikTok's ass at some point. You just can't predict it
Yeah,
just yet.
that's will be some disruptors for sure. Okay, cool. So let me summarize the I think one of the interesting and most valuable thing, the portrait or mental portrait of the successful person, which is it should be, or number one, it should be curiosity, then um uh ability,
Willingness to fail.
yeah, willingness to fail, or ability not afraid of failing, then being trustworthy, then empathy to learn from your customers and adapt as fast as you can, persistence when things go sour and um, uh, you can't give up, you shouldn't give up, because
Mm-hmm.
that's how you can break through. And the most important, get it right time, or in
Exactly.
the right time and the right place, which is probably the most hardest because
Very hard.
you have all these qualities, and then it's like wah, 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 because
Exactly.
you're a little bit too early or a little bit too late, and nobody care about how bright and brilliant you are if the party is over.
Absolutely. And then someone else who comes in fresh with lots of money, and by then you're already exhausted, they come in and steal it because they waited. And so, yeah, that's my biggest worry with Certify It, because I don't think people, the problem is massive. It's almost $1 trillion a year from online fraud. But at the same time,
Is it that painful right now for the
yeah,
base customer?
yeah, exactly. I think for most people, they're just, I think the pain is coming, and that, hopefully we'll still be around when more and more people realize the need for this.
Hmm. Well, I hope so, and I hope that that's going to be $1 billion exit.
Me too.
Let's let's focus on that.
Okay.
All
Think
right.
positive, right?
Absolutely, and I think this we also need to add it to the mental portrait of the successful person, being positive no matter what.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, thank you so much, Peter, for being here today, for your energy, positive, and for sharing such a valuable things. And as I always say, people probably know all of this information already. Like they read books, they smart, and especially our listeners, they're all smart people. But people most of the time need to be more reminded than taught, and it's kind of like one more kick in the right direction could change something. And I hope that our conversation is one of those kicks.
I hope so too. I really do. And I'd love to continue the conversation.
Absolutely.